Hi, fourth graders. Today we're going to start a lesson on reading and writing tenths in decimal and fraction forms, and we're going to learn how to represent and interpret models for tenths as well. You can see on this page some familiar models that we've been using dealing with fractions, and in each model, when I'm looking at either this model in a circle form or a circle model or a bar model right here or even a number line, that all of them are showing 1/10. So what we're going to be using is something called a decimal, and this actually means that there are digits to the right of a decimal point. So let's look at some other models here. So this is not an unfamiliar model to you. These are things we've been talking about. So here we have a mixed number, 23 and 1/10, and here we have the word form 23 and 1/10. We're going to learn today how to actually represent those in a decimal form. And the thing that we need is something called a decimal point. So we're going to go back to, I just want to show you and bring you back to what we started at the very beginning of the year using place value. So again, here's that number, only it looks slightly different. So you remember I wrote it as 23 and 1/10. This is a different way to represent it here. This actually is using something called a decimal point. So what you'll see right here is the decimal point. And we read this just like I had earlier said, 23, 20, 23, and 1/10. Just like we read our mixed number here, 23 and 1/10. The decimal point, we always use the word and when we're saying it out loud, just like we have been when we're making fractions here. So let's go back to our original models that we were looking at. So again, we had both a model in the form of a circle, a bar model here, or the number line here. I want to go back to how we're going to represent that in a decimal form with a decimal point. You can see on these models that they are showing the number 1/10. I noticed that there is 1 out of 10 parts shaded in our circle. I also notice there's 1 out of 10 parts shaded in our bar model. So that, as we've been doing in the past, we know we write our fraction as 1/10. We can also write that, just as I was showing you before, with place value, with a decimal point. And if you remember, we said this is the tenths place. And so in this case, if we had 1/10, we would put a 1 in the tenth. Since we don't have anything more than 1/10, we'll put a 0 in the ones place since we do not have any whole. So now it's important to understand that our fraction form is actually equivalent or has the same value as the decimal form. So 1/10 equals 1/10. So let's try this with some other numbers and see if we can understand a little bit more, and then I'm going to release you to practice. Alright, so again, I said that this is our ones place, and this is our tenths place. So what if we were to change our models a little bit? So I'm going to add another color here, and let's go ahead and shade in more areas on our models. And again, use our number line as well. So if we were to count with our number line, we know we're counting by tenths. So this first is 1/10. Our second one would be 2/10, and the third would be 3/10. So I'm thinking in your head that you probably can jump ahead and imagine what I'm going to say. So now as I look at all of my models, what do I see shaded in or labeled in each of the models? What do I see in my circle model? What do I see in my bar model? And what do I see on my number line that is labeled? I'm hoping in your head right now you're thinking, oh, I see 3 parts out of a total of 10 parts, or 3/10. And to write that as a decimal, we would write a 3 in the tens place. We don't have any holes, so we write 0 in the ones place. I'm going to go ahead and release you right now to read from your new textbook, starting on page 4 through page 6, and do some practice problems, number 1 through 7. You're going to be seeing models that are bar models and fraction models, or just a representation of a fraction, and see if you can write that as decimals. Good luck.